So our next speaker is Dr. Tanira Kingi, Emeritus Scientist and Climate Change Commissioner. Here we're talking about working together for the future of fresh water. Tanira is an agricultural economist with over 30 years experience across the primary industry sectors. He is currently a research consultant and science advisor, developing integrated multimodal frameworks to model mitigation and land use change scenarios for farming entities, predominantly Maori collectives. Tanira is an emeritus scientist, a scion, a climate change commissioner, a past member of Kahui Waimaori, and on the design of Te Manawa o Te Wai. He's an advisor to MPI and MFE and holds a number of directorships in the agricultural sector, including PAMU or Landcorp. Tanira has a PhD in agricultural economics and development from the Australian National University, a Master of Applied Science with Honours in Agricultural Systems Management from Massey University. Tanira is affiliated to Ngāti Whakaui, Ngāti Rangatihi, Te Aroa Whānui, and Ngāti Awa. Welcome, Tanira.
Kia ora, everyone. Thanks for the introduction. Can you hear me?
We can, thanks.
And I'm at a bit of a disadvantage here. I can't see the audience, and I'm not too sure what you can see on your your screen. Have you got my title slide?
We can see you.
Okay. Okay, good. All right. So I'm good to go.
You are. Are you operating the slides, Tanira, or do you want me to do it?
No, I'm driving them. I've got my finger on the button now. So just to start off, thanks for the invitation, and I am sorry that I couldn't make it in person to the conference. I had a mishap with a flight of stairs, and I'm now in a leg brace. Thanks also for the working title of my presentation about working together, and it was good coming in towards the end and listening to John. And I will touch on a couple of the points that he made, particularly around farming practices and regenerative and organics, also grouping regulations and the importance of that. But the main focus of my presentation is around positioning the agricultural sector, or repositioning the agricultural sector, given the regulatory challenges in front of the sector, but also shifting market trends and societal expectations as well. So let's get underway. As everyone knows, there is a large number of proposed legislation and regulations that are stacked up on top of each other right now. 2025 is a seminal year with the introduction of the proposed pricing mechanism, which is currently under consultation now. And also the development of regional policy statements based on the 2020 National Policy Statement for Freshwater. The focus of this presentation will use examples from the Māori sector. I'm going to assume that most people in the audience understand the key characteristics of the Māori sector in terms of land tenure and governance structures, and that these governance structures are managed, governed, and directed by representatives of landowning groups. And what I'm going to be going through is just some examples around the responses of the Māori agribusiness sector, Māori farmers to a number of challenges, including proposed regulatory changes. Just tell me when I click and I'm moving the slide, does everyone see the a new slide come up? I'll take that as a yes. I should say that I planned for around about a 15 to 16 minute presentation, and I see I've got 20 minutes, so hopefully I'll have some time at the end for questions. I do have a habit of running over time though, so I may go over my 15 minutes. I'm going to start with the Kāhui Waimāori and just around the intent. So as a member of this group from 2018 to 2021, the group was an interesting grouping of individuals with a mixture of legal academics and practitioners and academics. There were scientists on there. There were agribusiness experts, an ex-cabinet minister, and a self-defined Tai Tokero Kaitiaki who would travel the rivers and the lakes of Northland, reporting on breaches of consents and pointing out where he believed that negative impacts were being made on the waterway. But one of there are two components or two areas of focus of the Kāhui Waimāori, and one is the acknowledgement or the recognition that where we have got to now has, and with the degradation of our waterways, our rivers, our lakes, the loss of or the continued loss of wetlands, damage to estuaries, etc., was the result of the failure of past policy frameworks and legislation. So that was our starting point. The second key area was that we focused on the need to develop mechanisms to increase the participation and leadership of Māori communities that had been connected to waterways for many, many generations in the design and implementation of this policy. So just a quick comment on my two slides there. I am not saying at all that Five Star Beef is in breach of any consent, or that the intensive irrigation in the Canterbury Plains is of any particular problem. They were just quite stunning graphics that I thought I'd use to illustrate this opening slide. So don't read too much into those two pics that I've got there. Many of you would have seen this. It came out in the 2019 Te Mana o Te Waia report that the Kāhui Waimāori wrote for the minister. I won't go through the obligations or the hierarchies there, because I'm sure everyone is very familiar with them. I want to focus in, however, on mana whakahaere. It is both a process and it is a construct, which aims to provide the direction of the establishment of groups. This is a second report that Kāhui Waimāori wrote in August 2021, and it's available on the MFE website. I want to spend a bit of time on the concept and the structure of mana whakahaere in the next few slides. And I want to start with by going back in time a bit to 2010, to a catchment that I'm very familiar with, Lake Rotorua. And this is a set of slides that were developed by a consultancy team for the Bay of Plenty Regional Council around about that proposed a solution to the excessive levels of nitrates going into Lake Rotorua. 270 tonnes needed to be removed from the agricultural sector. The total amount that needed to come out was 350 tonnes, and this is one scenario that was produced. It was not converted or translated into Bay of Plenty Regional Council policy, but it was part of the discussions. And you can see the drastic shift, or the 70 years of intensification with livestock farming and dairy farming there, And then this solution proposed the removal of all dairy farms and a significant reduction in livestock. And what that did is that it triggered a response from the communities in the catchment. And 3 groups were established. The first was the Chautawa Primary Sector Collective, or Chautawa Aratoa, which had the Māori authorities inside Lake Rotorua catchment, but it also went across the Te Arawa Rohe and included land blocks and land authorities throughout the Te Arawa Rohe, which is through the central part of the Bay of Plenty Regional Council District. It also triggered the establishment of the Lake Rotorua Primary Producers Collective, which represented the majority of dairy farmers and the larger livestock farmers in the group. And it also led to the establishment of the Lake Rotorua Stakeholder Advisory Group. And for my sins, I chaired all 3 of these entities, and I'm still the chair of Te Arawa Aratoa. The Stakeholder Advisory Group established the integrated framework. I'm not going to go into that. There's a slide here which showed one of the key platforms of that, which was the sector averaging model. Don't take any notice of the numbers in there, because they were all produced using Overseer versions 4 and 5, and you can see the date that it was produced in 2013. But this, I think my point with this slide and the previous slide is that farmers respond to challenges in different ways. This particular catchment and the farmers in it responded proactively to forming collectives, forming groups, and working cooperatively with the council to develop the framework, which was eventually adopted as Plan Change 10. It wasn't a perfect model. We made mistakes. There were certain groups that were not happy. There were farmers that thought we were moving too hard, too fast. Change was coming too quickly on them, and so it didn't have 100%, and nothing ever will. But we did get the majority of the players and the farmers across the line with it. So just sticking with Lake Rotorua, or as we call it, Ngāti Whakaua, Te Rotorua Nui a Kahumata Moamoe a I Henga. Lake Rotorua is always a lot quicker and simpler to pronounce. It has 9 major streams, or rivers as we call them, in the catchment, 18 minor streams. And every one of those waterways has a group connected to them. A landowning group of hapu, and some of these groups have been connected with these waterways for many generations. I'm going to give you an example here, and I'll try to go through this as quickly as possible because time is moving on. And this is a river that runs underneath the highway on the eastern side of Lake Rotorua. Its headlands are up in the hills. Within the catchment, let me just back up a second. There is one waka, so we all affiliate to Te Arawa. There are 7 iwi. There are 20 marae, over 20 marae, and there's an undisclosed number of hapu. Some would say they go into the hundreds. Others say they're a little less. And you'll see the list on the side there around the top 2 names are iwi, and then underneath that we have got hapu. And this is just one small stream, one of those minor streams in Lake Rotorua catchment. And so the issue here, the question here is, how do we build a framework where we have the participation, and we can encourage the participation of these landowning groups and groups that have been associated with these waterways for centuries. How do we include them into this concept of mana whakahaere? Because the simple mana whakahaere that regional councils would like to aim for is 1 mana whakahaere for every catchment. And you can see that in a catchment of this size, that's not possible. We need to be able to devise a system that we can work from the bottom up. So let's just keep moving. I want to touch on climate change. We've got the pricing agricultural emissions discussion document that's out now. A couple of points that I want to cover off is just to understand what the impacts of this will be on the farmers. There are a number of impacts, but I just want to hone in on a couple of areas. And then the response of farmers. So I'm just going to try and pick up the pace here a bit to try and get close to my 15 minutes. This is some modeling that me and my colleague Phil Janot have been doing for several years now on a piece of research funded by the Greenhouse Gas Centre. And you can see there that we've got a range of prices. This is a piece of work that we were commissioned to produce for the government. The prices were given to us, and you can see them along the top there. And then we had 20 farms, and these were all Māori authorities. And you see that we've got the averages across them there. And if we look for dairy, 2025, the proposed levy will have a 2.4% impact or increase in operating costs and a reduction in EBITDA. Then that increases to 8.4% in 2030, and you can see the 2035. If we go across to sheep and beef, it's 5.5 and 19% for those 2 years. Other modelling that we've done, and this is in the notes below, and there's a paper there that you can track down, which is presented at the New Zealand Agriculture and Resource Economic Society conference in September. You've got numbers there that were a little lower in dairying, given the models that the case farms that we modelled, but the sheep and beef impact for 2030 is very similar. So it's 6% in a reduction in
Kia ora, just letting you know you've got about 8 minutes remaining. Only you can.
8 minutes. Oh, great. Okay. Well, I'll still try and get through this as quickly as possible. So thank you for that. Apologies, audience. I just got told that I've got a little bit more time. So I was just talking to the tech guy. The upshot of this slide is that the cost structures will change, and this is, some will say, well, we've been farming. Our operational models for farming have it means that we've been able to put our hand up and say that we are the most efficient farmers at converting grass to protein in the world, and we are. But in terms of the cost, the full cost of that production, our waterways, our soils, the loss of biodiversity has been the real cost. So this is an attempt to just make that more transparent in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions that have been produced. I'll come back to this a little later around the need for farmers to understand if their cost structures are going to change, they're going to take an impact on EBIT. The key point here is, how do you position the sector to move into and adopt alternative revenue streams? Because if the footprint of the agricultural component is going to get smaller and at the same time become more efficient and optimized, there will be the need for additional revenue streams to supplement the loss, but also to maintain the viability of the farms. This brings me to, I'm also assuming that everybody knows what I'm talking about here with some people are calling it the He Waka Econo discussion document, which it isn't. It's the pricing mechanism discussion document that came out last week. I just want to draw your attention to pages 25 and 27, which talk about collectives. There are reasons that are given there for Māori collectives. Māori entities are referred to as having collective ownership. Many of the farms have multiple enterprises, but there's also a section in there that looks at the recommendation that collectives should go beyond just Māori collectives and be adopted across the sector for various reasons. But the two questions that I've got there is, how should these collectives under the agricultural pricing mechanism, how should they interact or be part of catchment groups and the future development and the evolution of catchment groups that are largely being driven by freshwater, but now we've got farmers who have got other priorities and other challenges there. And I think this is to the point that John made around grouping these regulations and grouping these legislative and regulatory requirements in a way that farmers are able to deal with them pragmatically, not have to report to multiple regulations or multiple requirements, but to be able to simplify that. But for the last few slides, I want to talk about what are the advantages of these collectives coming together. And the key point here is around positioning. This is some work, again, it's based on the program that's funded by the Greenhouse Gas Centre, and we're looking at 3 collectives. The Te Arawa Collective, I've got some stats there, I'm not going to go into it, but what is interesting is that while there are 2,600 land blocks, 110 and only 110 entities are over 80 hectares, and 20 entities control 60% of this land, and it is ture whenua Māori, so it's under the Māori Land Act. And so when you've got a small number of organisations that have got quite a lot of sway and influence within this large area of over nearly 65,000 hectares, you've actually got a core group of decision makers that can agree on direction and strategy. So just quickly here, this was the work that we were doing was, if we can work with one collective in an area and we join those collectives up, what are the advantages of that when exploring alternative land uses, alternative products, and then looking at that to influence both regional government and central governments in investments and co-investments in developing new supply chains. Because when we talk to these farmers, they're quite open with us, and they say, well, we can grow legumes, we can grow oats, we can grow peas, we can grow a whole lot of things, but we're not going to do anything like that, and we're not going to do it at scale if there's no supply chains or market channels that have been developed. And that requires investment. We have arrived here at this point in time about being one of the world's highest producers in trading dairy products with milk. We're major suppliers of red meat, but we're here now because of the infrastructure that underpins those sectors started its development over 100 years ago. We don't have 100 years, we don't have 50 years to do this. We do need to be able to lay the new tracks so that with farmers and in particular hard hill country farmers, which the Māori sector is overrepresented in, how do we support those farmers to look at alternatives into other options that are beyond planting in Pinus radiata or to selling their farms to carbon foresters. How do you lay new tracks so that they can see new opportunities to produce new crops? And look, this is my final slide, and I am getting very close to the. I've gone well over my 15 minutes, but here are some of the opportunities around alternative plant proteins, alternative wood products, which is the bottom left.
Yeah.
Cut off before I got to the end, but yeah, happy to take questions.
Yeah. So the question is, as we go forward into a more aligned space, how would you recommend we work meaningfully at a marae level, not just hapu and iwi?
So marae are the cornerstone institutions of our hapu and our iwi. So we've got, so the short answer to this is that just going forward, the regulations for freshwater and for the pricing mechanism, carbon pricing mechanism, they will need to be met by the producers, which are generally Māori authorities and corporations, trusts, post-settlement entities that have got farms. They're the ones that are going to have to respond to the regulations. But each of these entities support marae. Marae are integral parts of these of the network of hapu and iwi, and so moving forward, so that we can have support structures in place to bring landowners and as well as marae, there needs to be better support systems in place so that marae can be developed. If we're looking at another part to that question, is we're looking at diversification and food security and housing security. There are more demands now that have been made on Māori authorities and whenua and land owned by post-settlement entities to be able to provide for social needs. And so the marae are marae, hapu and iwi groups are critical for that.
All right, kia ora, Tanira. We'll need to move on to the next speaker now. So, look, we very much appreciate your presentation and setting out how we can work together better in the future, for the future of freshwater. Certainly, I'm currently working at Te Tūma Paeroa, so it's very interested to hear your address, and there's some very good points you've made there. Thanks. So, and look, we hope you recover quickly, and I'd just like everyone here to show their appreciation, and we'll try and get a gift to you to thank you.